I still remember the exact sound my presentation made when it hit the conference room floor. Not the soft thud of paper landing on carpet. No, this was the sharp slap of months of work being dismissed like yesterday's newspaper. The sound of my career being crumpled up and tossed aside by a man who couldn't spell synergy without spell check. My name is Samantha Brooks, and I'm 29 years old. 3 years ago, I walked into Meridian Global Solutions as a bright-eyed marketing assistant, convinced that hard work and talent would speak louder than office politics. I was wrong, dead wrong. But that mistake, that beautiful career-defining mistake, led to the sweetest professional revenge I could have ever imagined. Let me take you back to that Tuesday morning in March, the day everything changed. I was sitting in the conference room on the 32nd floor, looking out at the Chicago skyline. My presentation perfectly bound and organized in front of me. 6 months of research, analysis, and strategic planning for the Henderson Industries account, our agency's white whale, the account that could make someone's career, the account that Richard Morrison, my boss, had been chasing for 2 years without success. Before I tell you exactly how his arrogance became my springboard to the sweetest professional success of my life, could you take a second to like this video and subscribe? Because what I'm about to share will show you how one moment of corporate cruelty can backfire in ways that seem impossible until they happen in front of a $2 million contract. And trust me, you need to hear every detail of how one man's ego destroyed everything he'd built in 15 years. Richard walked in that morning with his usual swagger, coffee stain already decorating his tie, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Behind him came the Henderson Industries delegation, 3 executives in perfectly pressed suits who represented more money than our agency had ever seen in a single contract. "All right, Brooks," Richard said, not even looking at me. "Show them what you've got. And make it quick. We don't have all day." I stood up, my heart hammering against my ribs, and began my presentation. I'd practiced this moment 100 times in my mirror, in my car, even in the shower. I knew every slide, every statistic, every transition by heart. This wasn't just a presentation. It was my masterpiece. I talked about market penetration strategies, about demographic analysis that would revolutionize how Henderson Industries approached their target audience. I showed them data that their previous agencies had completely missed, insights that could increase their market share by 30% in the first year alone. The Henderson executives leaned forward, taking notes, asking detailed questions. Their eyes lit up when I explained the social media integration strategy. I could see it. I had them. For 45 minutes, I poured my soul into that room. Every chart, every graph, every carefully crafted sentence was designed to show Henderson Industries that Meridian Global Solutions wasn't just another agency. We were their future. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then, Mr. Henderson himself, the CEO, started to smile. "Miss Brooks," he said, "this is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we've been looking for. Your market analysis is incredibly thorough, and frankly, it's the first presentation that's actually understood our brand identity." I felt like I was floating. This was it. This was my moment. 3 years of being overlooked, of watching less qualified people get promoted around me, of being treated like a secretary instead of a strategist. It was all about to pay off. That's when Richard cleared his throat. "Well," he said, standing up and walking over to my presentation materials. "It's an interesting start, but it's not quite there yet." He picked up my bound presentation, 6 months of my life, and I watched in horror as he held it up like it was contaminated. The truth is, this presentation is garbage. The words hit me like a physical blow. The Henderson executives looked confused, glancing between Richard and me like they'd missed something crucial. "I'm sorry?" Mr. Henderson said. "I thought Miss Brooks's presentation was exactly what we—" "Don't waste my time," Richard interrupted. And then, I swear this moment is burned into my memory forever. He threw my presentation down on the conference table so hard that papers scattered everywhere. Some slides fell to the floor, others bent at the corners. 6 months of work, reduced to trash in front of the most important clients of my career. "What Miss Brooks here doesn't understand," Richard continued, stepping on one of my charts as he paced around the table, is that Henderson Industries needs proven experience, not amateur hour theories from someone who's never handled an account this size. My face burned with humiliation. I wanted to defend myself, to tell the Henderson executives that every theory in my presentation was backed by months of research and analysis. But my throat felt like it was closing up, and all I could do was stare at my scattered work on the floor. Mr. Henderson looked genuinely uncomfortable. Mr. Morrison, with all due respect, Miss Brooks's presentation addressed several concerns that we've had with our current strategy, and her solutions seem— Trust me on this one, Richard said with that fake laugh that made my skin crawl. I've been in this business for 15 years. What you need is someone with real experience. He gestured to himself. Someone who understands the big picture. I knelt down and started gathering my papers, trying not to let anyone see the tears of rage building in my eyes. As I crawled around on my hands and knees, picking up the charts and graphs that represented months of my life, I could hear Richard launching into his own impromptu presentation, the same tired strategies that had failed to land Henderson Industries for 2 years running. That's when my phone buzzed. I was still on the floor, clutching a crumpled page of demographic analysis, when I felt the vibration in my jacket pocket. Normally, I would never answer my phone during a meeting, especially not while being humiliated by my boss in front of major clients. But something made me glance at the screen. The number wasn't one I recognized, but the area code was New York. My hands were shaking as I quietly slipped out of the conference room, Richard's voice droning on behind me about traditional marketing approaches and time-tested strategies. I found an empty office down the hall and answered the call. Samantha Brooks? Yes, this is Samantha. My name is David Chen, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Patterson & Associates. We're a boutique marketing firm in Manhattan, and we've been following your work. I almost laughed. Following my work? My work was currently scattered across a conference room floor being stepped on by a man who thought creativity was a dirty word. I'm sorry, I said. I think there might be some mistake. No mistake, David continued. We've seen your campaign analysis for the Brookstone retail chain, your social media strategy for the nonprofit sector, and your market research methodology. Frankly, we're impressed. We'd like to offer you a position as senior marketing strategist. My head was spinning. I'm sorry, how did you— Your portfolio's been circulating in our industry circles for months. The work speaks for itself, Samantha. We're prepared to offer you a starting salary of $95,000, full benefits, and a signing bonus of $15,000. Plus, you'd be working directly with Fortune 500 clients from day one. I had to sit down. My current salary at Meridian Global Solutions was $52,000. No signing bonus, no real benefits, and definitely no Fortune 500 clients. I need to think about this, I managed to say. Of course. But Samantha? David's voice was warm, professional, everything that Richard's wasn't. We believe in recognizing talent when we see it. Your presentation for Henderson Industries, the one that's been making rounds in the industry, it's exactly the kind of innovative thinking we want on our team. My blood ran cold. What presentation for Henderson Industries? The market analysis and social media integration strategy. It reached our desk last week through industry contacts. Brilliant work. We've actually been trying to track down the author for days. I felt like I was going to be sick. Someone had leaked my presentation. Someone had stolen 6 months of my work and was shopping it around to other agencies. But who? The only people who had access to that presentation were the conference room, Richard, the Henderson executives. Samantha, are you still there? Yes, I whispered. I'm here. I know this is sudden, but we'd love to fly you out to New York this weekend. All expenses paid, of course. You could meet the team, see our offices, and we could discuss the position in detail. What do you say? Through the glass walls of the empty office, I could see Richard still presenting to the Henderson executives. He was animated now, gesturing wildly, probably taking credit for insights he'd never had in his life. Mr. Henderson looked bored, checking his watch. The other executives were scrolling through their phones. Yes, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. I'd love to meet with you. Excellent. I'll have my assistant email you the details. And Samantha, welcome to the big leagues. I hung up the phone and sat there for a moment, staring at my reflection in the dark computer screen. 29 years old, and I'd just been offered a job that would change my life. A job that recognized my work for what it really was, not garbage to be thrown on the floor, but innovation worth stealing. I walked back toward the conference room, my scattered presentation pages still clutched in my hands. Through the glass, I could see that the meeting was wrapping up. The Henderson executives were shaking hands with Richard, but their body language told a different story. Polite smiles, quick handshakes, one executive already heading for the door. As I approached the conference room, Mr. Henderson was leaving. He stopped when he saw me in the hallway. "Miss Brooks," he said quietly, "I want you to know that your presentation was exceptional. Truly innovative work." He glanced back toward the conference room where Richard was still talking to the remaining executives. "I've been in business for 30 years, and I know quality when I see it. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. That means a lot." He handed me his business card. "If you ever decide to go freelance, give me a call. We could use someone with your insights on our team." I watched him walk away, then looked down at his business card. Henderson Industries, CEO and founder, direct line. That's when I started to smile. I walked back into the conference room where Richard was organizing his papers, looking pleased with himself despite the fact that the Henderson executives had left without committing to anything. "Well," he said without looking at me, "I think that went well. Crisis averted." He finally glanced up and saw my scattered presentation materials still in my hands. "You can throw that garbage away now, Brooks. No point keeping it around." "Actually," I said, setting my papers down carefully on the conference table, "I think I'll hold on to it." Richard shrugged. "Your call, but we should probably schedule a meeting to discuss how you can improve your presentation skills. Maybe take a course or something." I nodded, still smiling. "That's a great idea, Richard. Actually, I was thinking the same thing." I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my emails until I found the one I was looking for. David Chen's assistant had already sent the travel details for my New York interview. "In fact," I continued, "I'm going to be taking a personal development weekend, visiting some agencies in New York, seeing how the professionals do it. Good for you, Brooks. It's about time you realized you need to step up your game." I gathered my scattered presentation pages, every single one of them, and tucked them carefully into my portfolio bag. 6 months of work that Richard had called garbage, that someone had apparently stolen and was circulating around the industry, that Patterson and Associates thought was brilliant enough to headhunt me for. "You're absolutely right, Richard," I said. "It's time to step up my game." That weekend in New York changed everything. Patterson and Associates wasn't just offering me a job, they were offering me a career. Their offices occupied 3 floors of a Manhattan skyscraper with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The team was small but elite, working with clients that most agencies could only dream about. David Chen turned out to be everything Richard wasn't: supportive, brilliant, and genuinely excited about innovative marketing strategies. During our interview, he spread my presentation materials across his conference table with the reverence of an art collector examining a masterpiece. "This Henderson Industries analysis," he said, pointing to my demographic breakdowns. "It's exactly the kind of thinking that separates good marketers from great ones." "How long did this research take you?" "About 6 months," I said. "But it felt like a labor of love. I can tell. Every page shows incredible attention to detail." He looked up at me with genuine curiosity. "Can I ask why you're looking to leave your current position? This level of work suggests you should be running your own accounts by now." I thought about Richard throwing my presentation on the floor, about 3 years of being overlooked and undervalued, about watching less qualified people get promoted around me. But I also thought about Mr. Henderson's business card in my wallet, about the phone call that had changed everything. "Let's just say I'm ready for an environment that appreciates innovation," I said. David smiled. "Well, you've certainly found it." They offered me the position on the spot. Senior marketing strategist, $95,000 base salary, $15,000 signing bonus, and a benefits package that made my head spin. Full health coverage, dental, vision, 3 weeks paid vacation, and a 401k match that was better than anything I'd ever dreamed of. But the best part? My first client assignment. "We'd like you to work on the Henderson Industries account," David said casually, as if he hadn't just handed me the keys to the kingdom. "They're looking for a new agency, and your presentation is exactly what they want. Think you're up for it?" I almost laughed out loud. I think I can handle that. The following Monday, I walked into Meridian Global Solutions for the last time. I'd spent the weekend crafting my resignation letter, and I'd never been more excited to deliver bad news in my life. Richard was in his office, feet up on his desk, scrolling through Facebook when I knocked on his door. "Brooks, how was your professional development weekend? Learn anything useful?" "Actually, yes. I learned quite a lot." I handed him my resignation letter, printed on crisp white paper and folded perfectly in half. "I'm giving my 2 weeks' notice." Richard's feet hit the floor with a thud. "You're what?" "I'm resigning. My last day will be Friday, March 28th. He opened the letter and scanned it quickly, his face going through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and then something that looked almost like panic. "This is ridiculous, Brooks. You can't just quit. We have projects, deadlines. All of my current projects are documented and up to date. I'll spend the next 2 weeks training whoever you'd like to take over my accounts." "But why? Where are you going?" He was standing now, the resignation letter crumpled in his fist. "Patterson and Associates in New York. They've offered me a senior marketing strategist position." Richard's face went white. Even he knew Patterson and Associates' reputation. They were the agency that Meridian Global Solutions aspired to be someday. "How much are they paying you?" he asked quietly. "Nearly double what I make here, plus benefits." "We can match that," he said quickly. "We can give you a raise, a promotion." "It's too late for that, Richard." I turned to leave his office, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Richard. They specifically recruited me based on my Henderson Industries presentation. You know, the garbage one you threw on the floor last week." I left him standing there with his mouth open and walked back to my desk to start packing my personal items. Word travels fast in a small office, and within an hour, everyone knew that I was leaving for a prestigious New York firm. Suddenly, colleagues who had barely acknowledged my existence for 3 years were stopping by my desk to congratulate me. But the best moment came on Thursday afternoon, the day before my last day. I was cleaning out my desk drawers when my phone rang. The receptionist's voice came through the intercom. "Samantha, you have a call on line 2. It's Henderson Industries." I picked up the phone with a smile already spreading across my face. "Samantha Brooks speaking." "Miss Brooks, this is Mr. Henderson. I hope you remember me from last week's presentation." "Of course, Mr. Henderson. How can I help you?" "Well, I wanted to inform you that we've decided not to move forward with Meridian Global Solutions. Your boss's presentation after yours was uninspiring, to say the least." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be sorry. The reason I'm calling is that I heard through the grapevine that you're moving to Patterson and Associates. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir. I start Monday." "Wonderful. I've already contacted David Chen and requested that you be assigned to our account. We want to work with the person who created that brilliant presentation, not the person who called it garbage." I glanced over at Richard's office. He was on the phone, gesturing wildly, probably trying to salvage the Henderson deal he'd single-handedly destroyed. "I would be honored to work with Henderson Industries, Mr. Henderson." "The honor is ours, Miss Brooks. David tells me the contract is worth about $2.2 million over 3 years. I'd say that's quite a way to start your new career. $2.2 million, the largest contract in Meridian Global Solutions history, walking out the door with me. Thank you, Mr. Henderson." "I won't let you down." "I'm sure you won't. And Miss Brooks, that boss of yours made a very expensive mistake last week." After I hung up, I sat at my desk for a moment, looking around the office where I'd spent 3 years being undervalued and overlooked. Tomorrow would be my last day, and then I was off to New York, to a career that would actually challenge and reward me. Richard's office door slammed shut so hard that the walls shook. Through the glass, I could see him pacing back and forth, running his hands through his hair. The Henderson deal was officially dead, and he was finally realizing what that meant for his career. I spent my last day at Meridian Global Solutions training my replacement, a recent college graduate who reminded me of myself 3 years ago, full of hope and ambition. I gave her all my client files, my project notes, and one piece of advice. Don't let anyone convince you that your ideas aren't worth listening to. On Friday afternoon, as I was carrying my box of personal items to the elevator, Richard appeared beside me. "Brooks," he said quietly, "I want you to know that I never meant—" "Yes, you did," I interrupted. "You meant every word. You threw my presentation on the floor and called it garbage because you wanted to humiliate me in front of the most important clients we'd ever had." The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside. "The difference between us, Richard, is that when someone knocked me down, I got back up and proved them wrong. When someone knocks you down, you'll probably just lie there and blame everyone else." The doors started to close, but I held them open for one more second. "Oh, and Richard, that garbage presentation you threw away? It just earned me a $2.2 million client." The last thing I saw before the doors closed was Richard's face, pale, shocked, and finally understanding the magnitude of his mistake. 6 months later, I was sitting in my corner office at Patterson & Associates, looking out at Central Park, reviewing the quarterly reports for the Henderson Industries account. We'd exceeded their projected market share growth by 47%. Their brand awareness was up 63% in key demographics. The social media strategy had generated more engagement than their previous 5 campaigns combined. My phone buzzed with a text from David Chen. "Board meeting at 3 p.m. Be ready for good news." The good news turned out to be a promotion to Director of Strategic Accounts, a $20,000 raise, and my own team of junior marketers. At 30 years old, I was the youngest director in Patterson & Associates history. That evening, as I was celebrating with my colleagues at a rooftop bar in Manhattan, my phone rang with a call from an unknown Chicago number. Something made me step outside onto the terrace to answer it. "Samantha Brooks." "Samantha, this is Monica Winters from Executive Recruitment Solutions. I'm calling on behalf of a former colleague of yours who would like to discuss a potential opportunity." I almost hung up, but curiosity got the better of me. "What kind of opportunity?" "Well, I have to be honest. The person who referred me to you is in a bit of a difficult situation. His agency lost several major accounts recently, and he's looking to start fresh with a new company. He specifically requested that I reach out to you because he has tremendous respect for your work." "What's his name?" "Richard Morrison. He said you two worked together at Meridian Global Solutions." I started laughing. I couldn't help it. Richard Morrison, the man who had thrown my career on the floor and called it garbage, was now asking me to help him find a job. "Ms. Winters," I said, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Mr. Morrison and I have very different perspectives on professional respect." "Oh, I see. Well, he seemed quite eager to reconnect with you. He mentioned something about wanting to apologize for past misunderstandings and possibly working together again. Tell Mr. Morrison that I appreciate his call, but I'm quite happy with my current position. And Ms. Winters? In the future, you might want to verify the nature of professional relationships before making referral calls." I hung up and walked back inside to my celebration party. My new team was toasting our latest client success, and David Chen was telling stories about the creative campaigns that had made Patterson & Associates legendary in the industry. Later that night, as I rode the subway back to my apartment in the village, I thought about the path that had brought me here. 6 months ago, I was a marketing assistant being humiliated in a conference room in Chicago. Tonight, I was a director at one of the most prestigious agencies in the country, with a corner office, a 6-figure salary, and the respect of the entire industry. The train pulled into my station, and as I walked up the steps to street level, I realized something important. I wasn't angry at Richard Morrison anymore. I was grateful. His cruelty had been the catalyst that pushed me to take risks, to bet on myself, to refuse to accept being undervalued. Without Richard throwing my presentation on the floor and calling it garbage, I might have stayed at Meridian Global Solutions forever, working for peanuts and watching less qualified people get promoted around me. His moment of arrogance had given me the motivation to transform my entire life. As I unlocked my apartment door, I made a mental note to send Richard a thank you card. After all, It wasn't every day that someone's worst professional moment turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to them. But that's not where this story ends. Because 3 weeks later, I got another call that would show me just how small the advertising world really is, and just how sweet revenge could taste when it was served at exactly the right temperature. I was in my corner office at Patterson and Associates, reviewing the latest campaign metrics for Henderson Industries, when my assistant knocked on my door. "Samantha, there's a Victoria Sterling on line 1. She says it's urgent." Victoria Sterling. Even I knew that name. Sterling and Associates was one of the biggest marketing conglomerates on the West Coast, with offices in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Seattle. They handled accounts worth hundreds of millions of dollars and had a reputation for aggressive expansion. I picked up the phone, curious about what the CEO of a major competitor could want with me. "Samantha Brooks speaking." "Miss Brooks, this is Victoria Sterling. I hope you have a few minutes to talk." Her voice was confident, businesslike, with just a hint of urgency underneath the professionalism. "Of course, Ms. Sterling. How can I help you?" I'll cut straight to the chase. "We've been watching your work at Patterson and Associates, and we're impressed. Very impressed. We'd like to offer you a position as Vice President of Strategic Marketing." I nearly dropped the phone. VP of Strategic Marketing at Sterling and Associates would be a massive jump, even from my current director position. That's very flattering, Ms. Sterling, but I'm quite happy at Patterson and Associates. I understand your loyalty, Miss Brooks, but hear me out. The position comes with a base salary of $180,000, plus performance bonuses that could push your total compensation well over $250,000. Full executive benefits, stock options, and your own team of 15 marketing professionals. My current salary was $115,000. Even with bonuses, I'd never see anything close to $250,000 at Patterson and Associates. "What's the catch?" I asked. Victoria laughed, a sound that was equal parts amusement and respect. "Smart question. There is one unique aspect to this position. We're expanding into the Chicago market, and we want you to lead a very specific acquisition project." "What kind of acquisition?" "Meridian Global Solutions." The words hit me like a physical blow. Meridian Global Solutions. My old company. Richard's company. "I see," I managed to say, keeping my voice steady despite the fact that my heart was suddenly racing. "The company is in serious financial trouble," Victoria continued. "They've lost several major accounts in the past 6 months. Their revenue is down 40%, and they're looking to sell. Our research shows that you know the company intimately, having worked there for 3 years. You understand their strengths, their weaknesses, their client base. And you want me to— what exactly? Lead the acquisition negotiations, due diligence, valuation, integration planning. Essentially, you'd be determining whether Meridian Global Solutions is worth buying, and if so, for how much." I stared out my office window at Central Park, my mind racing. 6 months ago, I was a marketing assistant at Meridian Global Solutions, being humiliated by Richard Morrison. Now, a major competitor wanted me to potentially buy the entire company. "Ms. Sterling, can I ask how you know about my history with Meridian Global Solutions?" "Industry contacts. Word gets around when talented people move between agencies. We also know about the circumstances of your departure." "What circumstances?" "Let's just say that your former boss's treatment of the Henderson Industries presentation has become something of a cautionary tale in certain circles." I almost laughed. Richard Morrison's moment of arrogance had apparently become industry folklore. "I need to think about this," I said. "Of course. But I should mention one more thing. Our preliminary research suggests that Meridian Global Solutions could be acquired for somewhere between $3 and $5 million, depending on their current debt situation. It's a distressed sale, Miss Brooks. They're desperate." After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, staring at the phone. The irony was almost too perfect to believe. Richard Morrison had thrown my presentation on the floor and called it garbage. Now, I was being offered the chance to literally buy his entire company. But I wasn't ready to make any decisions yet. First, I needed information. That evening, I called a former colleague from Meridian Global Solutions, Jessica Wong, who worked in accounting and had always been friendly to me during my 3 years there. Samantha. Oh my God, how are you? I heard you're killing it in New York. Hi, Jessica. I'm doing well, thank you. How are things at Meridian? There was a long pause. Honestly, not great. We've lost a lot of clients, and there have been some major changes. What kind of changes? Well, Richard Morrison was fired about 2 months ago. I nearly dropped my phone. Richard was fired? Yeah, it was pretty ugly. The Henderson Industries thing was just the beginning. After you left, we lost 3 more major accounts in quick succession. The board blamed Richard's management style and his inability to retain talent. Who's running things now? Mr. Garrison, one of the original partners, came out of semi-retirement to try to stabilize things. But honestly, Samantha, I don't think it's working. Half the staff has been laid off, and there are rumors that we're going to be sold. We talked for another 20 minutes, and by the end of the conversation, I had a much clearer picture of Meridian Global Solutions' current situation. The company that had once seemed so imposing and successful was now on the verge of collapse. The next morning, I called Victoria Sterling back. I'm interested, I told her, but I have some conditions. I'm listening. I want full authority over the acquisition process. If I determine that Meridian Global Solutions isn't worth buying, Sterling and Associates walks away. No questions asked. Agreed. I want a team of my own choosing for the due diligence process. Also agreed. And I want to know exactly what Sterling and Associates plans to do with Meridian Global Solutions if we acquire it. Standard integration process. We'd evaluate their client list, retain the profitable accounts, and absorb their best talent into our Chicago operations. What about their current employees? We'd keep the ones who fit our corporate culture and meet our performance standards. The rest would be let go with standard severance packages. I thought about Jessica Wong, about the other colleagues who had been kind to me during my years at Meridian Global Solutions. Most of them hadn't deserved to work for someone like Richard Morrison, and they certainly didn't deserve to lose their jobs because of his failures. I need a week to think about it, I said. Take your time, but don't take too long. Meridian Global Solutions won't last much longer without a buyer. That weekend, I flew back to Chicago for the first time since leaving Meridian Global Solutions. Officially, I was there to visit friends and family. Unofficially, I wanted to see the current state of my former company with my own eyes. I drove past the office building that had once felt so intimidating when I was a 26-year-old marketing assistant. Now it just looked like another downtown Chicago high-rise, smaller and less impressive than I remembered. On Monday morning, I called Victoria Sterling with my decision. I'll take the position, I said, but I have one additional request. What's that? If we acquire Meridian Global Solutions, I want the option to purchase the company myself, rather than having it absorbed into Sterling and Associates. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. That's unusual, Victoria said finally. What exactly are you proposing? I want to rebuild Meridian Global Solutions from the ground up. New management, new culture, but keeping the employees who deserve a second chance. I'll match whatever acquisition price Sterling and Associates would pay, plus a finder's fee for your services. You're talking about buying a marketing agency, Miss Brooks. That requires significant capital. I have some investors in mind. It wasn't entirely true. I didn't have investors lined up yet. But I had something better. I had Mr. B. Henderson's business card, and I remembered his words about being interested in working with me if I ever went freelance. I need to discuss this with my board, Victoria said. But in principle, it's intriguing. You'd still get the VP position and salary while you work on the acquisition. If you decide to buy the company yourself, Sterling and Associates gets a finder's fee and a strategic partnership agreement. If you don't, we proceed with the standard acquisition. That works for me. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a conference room in Chicago, across from Mr. Garrison and 2 other partners from Meridian Global Solutions. They looked exhausted, desperate, and significantly older than I remembered. Miss Brooks, Mr. Garrison said, I want to start by saying how sorry we are about the way your departure was handled. Richard Morrison's behavior was inexcusable. Thank you for saying that, Mr. Garrison. But I'm here to talk business, not the past. I spread out my acquisition analysis across the conference table. 2 weeks of intensive due diligence had given me a complete picture of Meridian Global Solutions' financial situation, and it was worse than I'd expected. Your current debt load is $2.3 million, I began. Your revenue is down 52% from last year, and you have ongoing legal expenses from 3 separate client disputes. Based on my analysis, the company's fair market value is approximately $2.8 million. Mr. E. Garrison winced. 2 years ago, we turned down an offer of $15 million from a Chicago competitor. That was before you lost Henderson Industries, Brookstone, Palmer Technologies, and 6 other major accounts, I said matter-of-factly. The market has spoken, Mr. Garrison. Meridian Global Solutions needs new leadership and a fresh start. And you think you can provide that? I know I can, but I'm not representing Sterling & Associates today. I'm here as an independent buyer. I pulled out a new set of documents, my formal offer to purchase Meridian Global Solutions. I'm prepared to offer $3.2 million for the company, which is above fair market value. The purchase would include all assets, client contracts, and existing staff. I'll also assume responsibility for the current debt load. Mr. Garrison looked at the offer with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Miss Brooks, you're 29 years old. Where are you getting $3? $2 million. I have investors who believe in my vision for the company's future. I pulled out another document. This is a letter of commitment from Henderson Industries, promising a 5-year marketing contract worth $8 million if I successfully acquire Meridian Global Solutions. I have similar commitments from 3 other Fortune 500 companies. It had taken 2 weeks of phone calls, meetings, and presentations, but I'd managed to secure enough financial backing to make the acquisition realistic. Mr. Henderson had been my first call, and his enthusiasm for the project had convinced other potential clients to take meetings with me. You've been busy, Mr. Garrison said, scanning the commitment letters. I don't believe in making offers I can't back up. The negotiation took 3 hours, but by the end of the meeting, I had a signed letter of intent to purchase Meridian Global Solutions. The closing would take place in 30 days, pending final due diligence and legal review. As I was packing up my documents, Mr. Garrison asked the question I'd been waiting for. What are your plans for current staff? I know we've had to make some difficult cuts recently, but there are still some good people here. I plan to evaluate each employee individually and make retention decisions based on performance and cultural fit. What about Richard Morrison? He's been struggling since his termination. He's reached out to several people here, looking for references or connections. I looked up from my briefcase, meeting Mr. Garrison's eyes directly. If Mr. Morrison would like to discuss employment opportunities at the new Meridian Global Solutions, he's welcome to submit an application like anyone else. Mr. Garrison nodded slowly. I see. Well, I think he might be interested in that opportunity. I'm sure he would be. 3 weeks later, I was back in Chicago, this time as the new owner of Meridian Global Solutions. The closing had gone smoothly, and I'd spent the previous week interviewing existing employees and planning the company's restructuring. Out of the original 53 employees, I'd decided to retain 31. Most of the cuts were in middle management, people who had perpetuated the toxic culture that had driven away so much talent over the years. Jessica Wong was staying, as were most of the creative and account management staff, who had actually done good work despite poor leadership. But there was still one interview left to conduct. Richard Morrison had indeed submitted an application, along with a cover letter that was equal parts desperate and delusional. He'd positioned himself as an experienced marketing executive seeking new challenges, without acknowledging that his previous challenges had resulted in the near collapse of his company. I'd scheduled his interview for 4 p.m. on a Friday, in the same conference room where he'd thrown my presentation on the floor 8 months earlier. At exactly 4 p.m., my assistant knocked on the conference room door. Ms. Brooks, Mr. Morrison is here for his interview. Send him in. Richard walked into the room, and I was shocked by how different he looked. Gone was the arrogant swagger, the expensive suit, the condescending smile. He looked older, thinner, and there was a desperation in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Samantha, he said, stopping just inside the doorway. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Please, have a seat, Mr. Morrison. I gestured to the chair directly across from me. The same seat where Mr. Henderson had sat 8 months ago when Richard had called my presentation garbage. Richard sat down carefully, as if he wasn't sure the chair would support him. I want to start by apologizing, he said immediately. My behavior toward you was inexcusable. I was wrong about your abilities, wrong about your presentation, and wrong about how I treated you as an employee. Thank you for saying that. I've had a lot of time to think about my mistakes over the past few months. Losing my job, watching the company fall apart, seeing talented people like you succeed while I struggled to even get interviews. He looked genuinely broken, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Tell me about your experience since leaving Meridian Global Solutions, I said. It's been difficult, Richard admitted. The industry is smaller than I realized, and word gets around. Most agencies know about the Henderson Industries situation, about the other accounts we lost. My reputation took a significant hit. What have you been doing for work? Consulting mostly. Small projects for local businesses. Nothing like what I used to handle. He paused, then looked directly at me. Samantha, I know I have no right to ask this, but I need this job. I need a chance to prove that I can be better than I was. I opened the folder in front of me. His application materials, along with my evaluation notes. Your resume shows 15 years of marketing experience, including 7 years in management positions. That's impressive. Richard's face lit up with hope. However, I continued, your tenure as director at Meridian Global Solutions was marked by high employee turnover, multiple client losses, and what several former employees described as toxic management practices. The hope faded from his eyes. I've talked to 12 different people who worked under your supervision, Richard. The feedback was remarkably consistent. Micromanagement, credit stealing, public humiliation of subordinates, and a general lack of respect for anyone you perceived as being beneath you. I can change, he said quietly. I know I made mistakes, but I can learn from them. Can you? Because 8 months ago, you threw my presentation, 6 months of my work, on the floor and called it garbage in front of our most important potential clients. That wasn't a management mistake, Richard. That was cruelty. He stared down at his hands, unable to meet my eyes. You're right, he whispered. It was cruel. And it was stupid. That presentation was brilliant. And I was too proud and too threatened by your talent to admit it. I closed his file and leaned back in my chair. I'm going to offer you a position at Meridian Global Solutions, Richard. His head snapped up, disbelief and relief flooding his face. You are? Yes, but not the position you're expecting. I pulled out a job offer letter and slid it across the table. Marketing assistant, $48,000 per year, standard benefits package, reporting directly to me. Your responsibilities will include research support, presentation preparation, client communication coordination, and whatever other tasks I assign to you. Richard stared at the offer letter like it was written in a foreign language. Marketing assistant? But I have 15 years of experience. 15 years of bad experience doesn't qualify you for a management position, Richard. This is an entry-level offer because, frankly, you need to learn the basics of how to treat people with respect and how to do quality work without stepping on others. This is the same job you had when you started here 3 years ago. Exactly. And if you take it, you'll be sitting at the same desk I used to sit at, doing the same research I used to do, and preparing presentations for the same conference room where you humiliated me. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. The difference is, Richard, I won't throw your work on the floor and call it garbage. I won't steal credit for your ideas or humiliate you in front of clients. I'll treat you with the professionalism and respect that every employee deserves. The same professionalism and respect you should have shown me. When I turned back around, Richard was still staring at the job offer, his hands shaking slightly. If you take this position, you'll be starting over at the bottom. You'll be answering phones, making copies, doing grunt work for junior account executives who are half your age. Your office will be a cubicle in the general workspace, not a private office with a view. And if I do well? He asked quietly. If you do well, If you show that you can work as part of a team without undermining others, if you demonstrate actual growth and change, then maybe we can discuss advancement opportunities in a year or two. Richard was quiet for a long time, reading and rereading the job offer. Why? He finally asked. Why would you offer me any job at all? I destroyed your career here. I humiliated you. I made your life miserable for 3 years. You didn't destroy my career, Richard. You launched it. Your arrogance and cruelty motivated me to leave this company and pursue opportunities I never would have considered otherwise. In a strange way, you did me the biggest favor of my professional life. I walked back to the conference table and sat down across from him. I'm offering you this job because everyone deserves a chance at redemption, Richard. Even you. But this is the only chance you'll get from me. Take the job and prove that you can change, or walk away and continue struggling to find work in an industry that remembers your failures. He picked up the pen I'd placed next to the offer letter, then set it down again. The people here, the employees who are staying, they all know what happened between us. Yes, they do. They're going to see me as the former director who's now working as an assistant. They'll know that I'm being punished. You're not being punished, Richard. You're being given an opportunity to rebuild your reputation and learn how to be a better professional. What other people think about your situation is irrelevant. He picked up the pen again, staring at the signature line. 8 months ago, I was making $120,000 a year and managing 15 people. 8 months ago, you also destroyed a company and ruined your professional reputation. Today, you're unemployed with no prospects and no references. This offer represents a chance to start rebuilding. Richard signed the contract. 2 months later, I was sitting in my new office, the same office that had belonged to Mr. Garrison, preparing for a major client presentation. Meridian Global Solutions had been transformed. New hires brought fresh energy and innovative thinking. Retained employees were thriving under respectful leadership, and our client roster was growing rapidly. The Henderson Industries account had been renewed for another 3 years. We'd landed 2 new Fortune 500 clients based on referrals. The company's revenue was already exceeding pre-crisis levels. My assistant knocked on my door. Ms. Brooks, the Henderson Industries team is here for the quarterly review. Perfect. Is the conference room ready? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Morrison finished setting up the presentation materials about 20 minutes ago. I smiled. Richard had been adequate as a marketing assistant, not exceptional, but competent. He showed up on time, followed instructions, and most importantly, treated his colleagues with respect. The transformation wasn't complete. I could still see flashes of his old arrogance, but he was clearly trying to change. I walked to the conference room, the same space where this entire story had begun 8 months earlier. The Henderson Industries executives were already seated, chatting with my account management team. Mr. Henderson looked up as I entered. Samantha, congratulations on the acquisition. Meridian Global Solutions feels like a completely different company. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. We're proud of the progress we've made. I looked around the conference room, taking in the scene. My team was confident and prepared. The client was engaged and happy. And in the corner of the room, Richard Morrison sat quietly with a notepad, ready to take notes and provide support as needed. It was the same conference room, with many of the same people, but everything had changed. Shall we begin? I asked, picking up the presentation materials that Richard had prepared. As I started the presentation, a comprehensive review of the Henderson Industries campaign performance, I caught Richard's eye for just a moment. He nodded slightly, a gesture that seemed to acknowledge the strange journey that had brought us both to this moment. 8 months ago, he had thrown my presentation on the floor in this very room and told me I needed to step up my game. Now, I was the CEO presenting to the same client, while he sat in the corner taking notes as my assistant. The presentation went perfectly. Henderson Industries was thrilled with their campaign results and committed to expanding their contract for the following year. After they left, my team celebrated in the conference room, discussing strategy for our next client meeting. Richard quietly collected the presentation materials and began cleaning up the room. As he gathered papers and straightened chairs, I realized that this was exactly what I had done in this same room 8 months ago. Picked up the scattered pieces of my work while my boss took credit for everything. The difference was that now I wasn't going to let him leave in silence. "Richard," I called out as he headed for the door. He turned back, notepad in hand, looking like he expected another assignment. "Good work on the presentation setup." Everything was perfect. His face showed surprise, then something that might have been gratitude. "Thank you, Samantha. I mean, Ms. Brooks." "Samantha is fine." He nodded and started to leave again, then paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." Do you think I'll ever be able to move beyond this? To rebuild what I lost?" I looked at him carefully. This man who had once held so much power over my career and had used it so poorly. "I think people can change if they really want to, Richard. But it takes time, and it takes genuine commitment to being better than you were. The question isn't whether you can rebuild what you lost. The question is whether you can build something better." He nodded slowly and left the conference room. I stayed behind for a few minutes, looking around the space that had seen so much drama over the past 8 months. In this room, I'd been humiliated and dismissed. In this room, I'd also just successfully presented to our biggest client as the CEO of my own company. My phone buzzed with a text message from David Chen at Patterson & Associates. "Heard about the Henderson renewal. Congratulations on building something amazing." I smiled and typed back, "Thanks." It turns out getting knocked down was the best thing that ever happened to me. As I walked back to my office, I passed Richard's cubicle in the general workspace. He was at his desk, typing up notes from the client meeting. 3 years ago, that had been my desk, and I had been the one taking notes and doing research for someone else's presentations. The circle was complete, but somehow it didn't feel like revenge anymore. It felt like justice, tempered with mercy, and the possibility of redemption for everyone involved. That evening, as I locked up my office and headed home, I realized that Richard Morrison had been right about one thing, 8 months ago in this very building. It had been time for me to step up my game. I just hadn't realized how high I'd end up playing.